Hello, everybody. My name is Paul Chin Jr., and welcome to Talking Serverless, a podcast where we bring on people in the serverless community who are doing super interesting things, and we talk about it. It's Talking Serverless, and today I'm really excited because I get to bring on a colleague of mine from Serverless Guru who is not only an AWS machine learning hero. He's also one of the swaggiest developers I know. When I ran into him at reInvent last year, we had a super great time, and really looking forward to hearing about his latest work today. And so, without any further ado, let's introduce Cyril Bandolo. Hey, Cyril.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. That was a very interesting intro. I remember the experience we had in reInvent. I tend to think what happens in Vegas should really stay in Vegas because there are so many interesting things which go on in Vegas every time I go there. So it was a very interesting experience to have. Say yes, I'm a machine learning hero, and I think it's been a very good transition in my life, which has helped me meet a couple of interesting people through that. Traveled to Vegas for reInvent, had a lot of like the Hero Summit we had. We discussed about some of the things that are coming up, products that are coming out in serverless, in machine learning. So it has really been a very good, how can I say, position or a good title or a good member of the community. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, let's get right into it. Cyril, how did you get started into machine learning in the first place? It's such a huge field in my mind. How did you first get started in it?
Yeah, it has a very interesting question because I mean, if you asked me like a decade ago, if I was actually going to be doing machine learning, back then we didn't even have those terms as popularized as now. So I was a data analyst doing my regular data analyst job with Excel. And then R was the main programming language back then. Like, okay, R can do some statistical analysis for you, help do what I'm currently doing with statistics in Excel. I say, okay, fine, let me learn R. Back then, Python was not a thing. If you look at the curves, R was the winner. So all of a sudden, I said I wanted to do more. My database became bigger than Excel could handle. So SQL helps me out because with Excel, back then, a million rows is the max you could use in a data set. So as soon as you start talking about billions of rows of data, you now need to bring in SQL. Then with that curiosity, I found myself moving to Power BI, learning Power BI as well for data visualization and also Tableau. And then I what more start saying, okay, how can I start predicting? I have been looking at the past. This is what we saw last month. This is what we saw yesterday. This is the revenue. This is the cost. This is the expense. But now, how can I start predicting? So in the company, we had an issue with churn in the telecom companies. Customers were leaving. So I found myself researching more, and that's when the term data science came to play. I remember my first course was with the John Hopkins data science specialization in Coursera. So that's when I started learning about data science. And then from then onwards, I started finding myself using terms like machine learning and why not now, maybe even Gen AI. So it has been a gradual journey, right? Yeah. And here we are.
That's really cool because it lines up with sort of the expansion of the technology industry, right? People were doing lots of things with Excel, and then big data became everything, and corporations were trying to figure out how to leverage big data. And then extended from it to now we call it machine learning. And it really is, like you said, just about trying to make predictions. I mean, that's all ML AI stuff is, just trying to make predictions. But you also are a serverless developer. And when I think of machine learning and data analytics, it's not always directly associated with like serverless workloads. So how'd you get into the serverless side of it?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I have been on the machine learning side for some time. And when I came into contact with Serverless Guru, I was very fascinated by the work, the culture. Some of the staff in there were telling me while I was outside, and also the aspect of moving to the cloud, the whole serverless, you going cloud native, because one of the issues we have is managing the servers, spinning those EC2 instances, and managing the provisioning and all that. It's so when I heard about serverless as well as serverless guru, so it was around that time I started putting resources together to learn how to build my machine learning models serverlessly. And around that time, I also got a job in Serverless Guru. So I worked on a couple of client projects which were strictly serverless. So working serverless for a couple of months in Serverless Guru was really what made me get that serverless touch. And it leads me to the fact that I felt there was this knowledge gap between the traditional machine learning engineer who is focused on maybe accuracy, like you said, is not really thinking about how to deploy serverlessly with all the benefits of serverless. And on the other end, there is the serverless developer, some of my colleagues in Serverless Guru, who would love to add the innovation and the power of machine learning, all the beautiful stuffs, all the fancy stuff that we see in their current serverless application. So that is how I found myself on both walls and trying to bridge the gap between those two.
So you were actively creating like this niche for yourself, like bringing these different technologies together, putting your head down and trying to figure it out. Like did what were some of like the challenges that you had in putting these two technologies together, machine learning and cloud native serverless deployments?
Yeah,
Anything that really stands out, when you were early on in your work trying to figure it out?
yeah. Early in work, it was like, you know, again, the major stress on machine learning had been accuracy, accuracy back then, accuracy, accuracy, accuracy. How can I make my models more accurate? And then we are using Python. So one of the first challenges I faced was most of serverless is from full stack developers and they are using Node.js, TypeScript. Oh, I don't know anything. I don't know. I don't even know what TypeScript is. I mean, I don't know how to build a TypeScript. So that was the first setback. There we go again. I have to learn a new programming language. I have to go back to HTML, CSS, JavaScript, understand where the full stack developer is coming from to be able to integrate my model or my workload into his current pipeline or project. So that was the challenge for me. And I found it also very interesting because I had to pick up TypeScript, pick up JavaScript, which before I wasn't bothered about.
Yeah. So, I love JavaScript. And when I started learning how to code, I focused only on JavaScript because I knew I was going to do web things. I just wanted to do web stuff. But since then, I've now ended up learning other languages like Python, like Java, but I've never done like R or math specific, statistics specific languages. What are the differences between, say, the work that you were doing in R and Python, and then having to adapt it for Node and the JavaScript, TypeScript ecosystem?
Yeah, that's interesting. It's pretty interesting because I noticed that, for example, Python, which is now the most popular in terms of machine learning data analysis, because there are lots of interesting packages that have been put in Python. So Python is number one winner. R is good for statistics. I noticed that they are similar. So JavaScript, you would see there is the object, there is the string, you would declare a class. So at the end of the day, I came to it's a good experience to know that software development is just about understanding the syntax of each of those languages, getting your logic, your if, your loop, your while loop, for loop, things like that. And at the end of the day, the languages were very similar because they were all object oriented. So I mean, I was thinking it would be an uphill task to get to grasp JavaScript, and but I found that it was just easy, and I wondered why I didn't dare to earlier. You know, yeah.
Doing multiple languages is kind of frustrating if you haven't gotten the fundamentals of programming, right? Like if you end up basically like memorizing the syntax for one language without really knowing how the language performs, then you're going to have a bad time. It's like people who jump into boot camps, I think, a little too much into tech stack specifically. Like, so they don't know any programming, and then they do a React boot camp, and now all they can do is React, but they haven't learned kind of like how that component gets created, like what the DOM really is, and that sort of thing. So, what kinds of like programming lessons or generalities are you using when you're building these machine language like solutions? You know, are you building just back end stuff, just front end stuff? Like, how does that work for machine language or for machine learning?
Yeah, that's interesting because the thing we notice is there are lots of interesting packages for machine learning. Think of contributions from Facebook, LinkedIn, like TensorFlow, PyTorch, for example, that are in Python, and you wouldn't find them anywhere else. So it leads to you. It brings that aspect of microservice way of thinking, which I am now working with the back end in Python because I have to leverage those packages. Then, when now I am trying to integrate front end, I am now coming forward with the TypeScript and the React. And that is the beauty of it because we need to use the technology that is best. I mean, we need to use what is best for the job, right? The right tool for the job. So for backend stuff, powering your applications, machine learning powered applications, let the Python and the machine learning power those apps, and let the TypeScript and the React and the whole, JavaScript come now to bring it forth to the customer.
Hmm. Did you find, moving away from big beefy like EC2 instances to do all these computations and calculations, is the serverless compute layer strong enough for all of this machine learning?
Yeah, that's interesting because you know the depends on the size of the models. We know that one of the major things is, for example, Lambda is limited, has limited resources like 15 minutes, 10 GB for the container image. So I kind of had that difficulty because we have models like transformers, which have lots of dependencies that need to be installed, and they can't really fit into that limitation, that resource limitation. So you can do some pruning with your models, reduce some, let's say for a neural network, reduce some of the networks that you might not need necessarily, some quantization to reduce the size of your model, that to try to fit within the limits. But at some point in time, there are some models that are just so large, so big that you have to go back to easy to. There's no turning. Yeah, there's no way you can turn around that.
Now, I think that's an important distinction to make because even though we are serverless guru and we love the serverless way, it's not perfect for everything. Obviously, there's no one perfect solution for everything, and I think it's for developers, it's important for them to understand the limitations of the tools that they're using and the benefits of the tools that they're using. What were some of the benefits that you saw from going serverless with machine learning?
Yeah, it's cool to build with machine learning. You build interesting things. You are able to predict all the fancy stuff. But with serverless, the key benefit, the thing that really made me attracted to serverless is about the cost management. the fact
Mm.
of pay as you go, because there are times you have unpredictable workloads which are not heavy and easy to be running constantly. So you have some workloads that are spontaneous and light. So that means you only pay for what you use, which is very interesting because as maybe a startup or a company that wants to do an MVP or something, you can easily get started with something that, okay, if people are not using it, if there's not much traffic, I'm not paying for it. But if I get more traffic, okay, we share the revenue. I'm going to pay as I grow. I paid as well. Yeah, so I found it very, very interesting, the serverless touch in that machine learning. And it also helped with no need to manage servers anymore. I don't need to bother about servers. AWS is going to manage it for me. And also scaling. So all the auto scaling is going to scale on its own. I don't need to bother about that. So it's really powerful when you bring those two together.
Are there any key services that you use from AWS to make all of this stuff possible? More than just Lambda, I would imagine. What other kind of technologies are in your stack that you use?
Yeah, so there are different technology for different issues or different projects. So there are times when all you need is just an AI service. I'm talking about not Gen AI, just an AI service like recognition, personalized, just a simple AI service to be added to your application for just for a specific solution, maybe sentiment analysis. You just want to get the sentiment, or you want to recognize use recognition for certain images or so. You can just add those AI services, and that is like the list which doesn't need lots of skills in machine learning. So a serverless developer could easily just add AI services. The next layer is when you want to use the built-in machine learning models in SageMaker, for example. So SageMaker is the tool that machine learning engineers would use, and a serverless developer would maybe leverage SageMaker serverless inference so that it brings you access to the SageMaker inbuilt models like XGBoost, Linear Learner, for example. If you love it, now you can serve it serverlessly using the serverless inference without managing the servers. So that is also a service that is used. Then you might want to go to the customization level. Now I want to build my own models, bring my own models, package them with my own Docker container. And that is when you'd be using now your Lambda container image along with Docker and pushing to ECR, the Elastic Container Registry. So that is, and then you can now orchestrate your container from that repository. So it just now depends on the project at hand and what is the best, what are you aiming for.
In the given modern climate, people always jump straight into generative AI and the chatbots and the large language models, but there's still a lot of really good basic, like you said, machine learning services. They're just HTTP APIs. If you're writing a front end project and you need some image recognition, you can call an API endpoint, pass it a JSON of your image, and it'll come back with all the different landmarks that it found. Like, this is a car and it's at this position in the picture, or these are humans and this is the sentiment analysis. I remember doing those back in like 2018, I think. And it was really remarkable because instead of running this big model on device in the client, you could just simply send a web request and some other big cluster will take care of it for me. And I just hit an endpoint. And I think that's really beautiful for web developers. And we're seeing that more complicated inferences can actually just happen over HTTP. What other kinds of like innovations or like new things have you developed over the last couple of years in making machine learning more accessible to like everyday developers? Any special projects or libraries or tools?
Yeah, so recently I have launched this course, and I would say it's because in my local community, I see that there are lots of things we need to learn. There's lots of kind of, I can say, hand holding, because at times we have these boot camps that come up and people go there, just like you said, learn to build a model just like that, but they don't even understand how to push code to GitHub. So they don't understand how powerful it is to automate your testing and use CI/CD. They don't understand how integration testing would help you, how end-to-end testing could be of help to you, how they don't understand certain things that make your application kind of realistic, or make it in such a way that it's what the customer expects to have, and you reduce some of the risk or make it robust. So I noticed that, especially when I started my YouTube channel. And that's why in my YouTube channel, I had to go back to, okay, how to learn Python, 90 days of analytics, did that last year. Moving gradually, there was SQL. So gradually now, I'm moving towards how can I have this course which tries to set the stage, give that minimum to people. So when somebody comes into the course, the person is able to understand all this foundation, have those things like understanding how to use CI/CD with GitHub Actions, for example, understanding how to use testing, like to write your tests, unit tests, integration tests, and your end-to-end tests. And there's something I have to bring chip in here, which I found interesting, a framework which I found interesting while building this course. There is a framework called SLS Jest, which was created by developers in Serverless Guru. So we have Hamza and Benoit. They created this extension to Serverless Jest to Jest testing, which is now called SLS Jest. So I've used it and I found it is really, really making your life easy. I don't know, maybe many people haven't used it, and I really used it in the course for the integration testing, end-to-end testing. I found it so marvelous. So I've really enjoyed that framework, and I've been giving some feedback to Benoit and to Hamza, and there are some things that they are working to upgrade, to move to upgrade that the SLSGS framework to better serve people like us developers.
I am always thankful for the amount of talent we have here at Serverless Guru. You know, people like Benoit and Hamza, when they make these new libraries and integrations to make software development easier, it's awesome because it's better for everybody. And then for folks who are new to it, it is important that they understand that there should be a process to the software development lifecycle. You know, a lot of people come into programming and they think, okay, I'm just going to make the stuff, and then they forget about all of the human things that need to happen, like, well, how are you going to deploy your code when you're not there? How do you make sure your code runs when you're not there? Like, the whole point of becoming a programmer is so that you get your hands off. Like, you write something, it will run on the machine. Theoretically, it should run on the machine forever without you ever having to mess with it again. That's when you know you've written software that is sustainable, that will go the test of time. And it's awesome to hear that you're incorporating these things into your course. But could you tell us a bit about the course? Like, I think this is the first time you've mentioned it, and I think it's live now. So for the people who are listening, you can go check it out now. But Cyril, can you tell me what the course is, and what people can kind of expect from it?
Yes, so the course is, we can expect it's what I have been learning all this while. It's just what has been going on through my mind all this while, from the machine learning side. Like, I started as an analyst, the machine learning coming in, and then the learning the serverless, and I understood these knowledge gaps between these two professions. So the course is about training you first serverless, understand the basics of serverless, understand how to build serverless application. We have lots of projects in the course for that, so that you can be able to build an application that is event driven. It's a microservice, so it's part of that whole microservice where you can always have your component updated at any time, and it's going to work with the whole system. So that is the first thing the course tries to do for somebody who wants to be a cloud engineer on AWS. And then the next thing is also teach you now the core of machine learning. That's looking at somebody like, okay, I'm a full stack developer, web developer. I don't really know what is really happening under the hood with machine learning. So make sure you understand what is happening with machine learning so that at any point in time, if in future you're getting some results that you doubt, you might be able to debug and know maybe where the problem is coming from. So it gives you also that foundation. And then now we move now to teaching you how to integrate the tool, either using the AI services project with AI service integration to an existing serverless app. So I have an existing app, maybe I have an old app of last year, 2 years ago. Now that I've learned this course, I'm able to go add some machine learning to it. I don't need to start from fresh. I've shown you how to add. So I can add those AI services like recognition, like we said, or I can go now to SageMaker comfortably, use one of the inbuilt models in SageMaker and leverage something like the SageMaker serverless inference, which is just a lambda that has been added for you in front of the model, and you're going to benefit from all the serverless facilities. So I can now go there, use any of the inbuilt models. So there's so many inbuilt models, and build and have an application which is, yes, a machine learning model with all the fancy things, but also serverlessly being served to my clients. Or if I now feel more comfortable, or I'm a machine learning engineer and I want to bring my own model, maybe we've developed our own model locally, or we are using an ensemble, which is a couple of models joined together doing some voting, and that is what we think is best for our use case. Now we can package it to a Docker container, put it to ECR, and let that run from there. So it's really trying to make sure that we have all these skills together, and those two professions, which I call best of both worlds, we bring them together. Why? Because I've seen the trend of job descriptions for the past 2 years, 3 years. It's like every company now is now wanting a one-man army. I see job descriptions. You need to be at the same time a data analyst, a data scientist, a data engineer. Same thing I see with a single employee has to be the whole IT department. So we have to move with the trends.
Speaking of these trends, you've been in the machine learning space for a while and you've been giving talks and you're a hero, from AWS. What are the trends that you're seeing in terms of the community's reactions, where their level of knowledge is at? How is the community taking on all of this machine learning newness?
Yeah, that's interesting because the variance is high and wide. So let's say, coming if you're looking at a region like, let's say, West Africa, so many countries there, the audience, the community, the technological maturity is not that high. They're still in the beginner level. So I would find myself doing more of talks about how to get started, how to maybe what the career is all about, what to expect. So it's more level 200 and more of general kind of understanding the map, understanding where you are in the map. On the other hand, looking at North America, Europe, most of the countries there, they are already technologically advanced, and the talks I would be giving there, or which will be favorable, will be more deep dives into this technology. Okay, let's see how to improve the maybe the concurrency in Lambda, things like that. So it's more of how can I deep dive into this, because the basics are already there. It's now how to improve the efficiency. So it's really wide, really varied, and again, each level of maturity determines the kind of talks. But of course, we know that Gen AI has been everywhere now. Gen AI, and I know it's linked to the fact that Gen AI has lots of every day something comes up. Every day something comes up. I think even recently Claude is talking about manipulating your computer screen for you, so there's so many things. Every single day we get something new. So I feel Gen AI, we haven't had enough of Gen AI, and there are lots of talks about Gen AI and machine learning.
As artificial intelligence has gotten more mainstream and is being used everywhere, I just assume it's in everything. My daily workflow has been impacted by these large language models, and for the better for the most part. I mean, I use the large language models to help me learn other languages or help me learn other frameworks, things that I'm not as familiar with. I feed it the documentation, and it's easy as copy pasting now. You don't have to set up, rigorous training iteration cycles or any of that. It can mimic what you give it pretty quickly. And it's that speed of, I guess, innovation that's really driving everything now. So when you were coming up with this course and you've been working on it, how do you handle just how much changes every day?
Yeah, that's interesting. So the interesting thing about the course is I have also been having my ear on the ground as I've been building the course. So there are a couple of videos that I add here and there, modify a couple of things to meet with the trends in technology. So I'm very well aware, but I also know that those principles, those foundation, like what we talked about, the different syntax, just learning syntax and in different programming languages, those core fundamentals, the core logic, or the way things, the way the process of software, the software development cycle, those things would always remain. So there are some core parts of the course that would always be needed for somebody to understand what the person is currently getting like output, so that the person can know where, maybe debug where a problem is coming from. So there are a couple of changes as well. So even in the course also, looking at some interesting things with Gen AI as well, so that there is that whole spectrum of very interesting things in the course.
Nice. Yeah, focusing on fundamentals and focusing on the, I guess, the primitives are always going to pay off, right? As I learn more about programming, I end up going down these big YouTube rabbit holes of how does the computer architecture actually work, right? And how does a chip work? And then, like, what is electricity? And you can go on forever into the fundamentals. And what I take away from all of those is that humans invented the math for a computer like 200 years before we had the hardware. Then the hardware was created, and from the very first computer till now, programming is still fundamentally the same. It's still a binary encoding system, and it's still just controlling state with a series of on and off switches. And I tell that to people when I run into them and I say, like, oh yeah, I'm a computer programmer, but it's really just about controlling switches. And they're like, what are you talking about? I was like, yeah, that's all it is. Like, we've told a computer that when these sets of switches are on and off in this way, it represents a cat. And you can see in their mind, like, like the light bulb goes off, like, oh, that's it. Like, we've computers haven't changed fundamentally in, all of our time, and I don't know if it'll ever be, different. There are newer models of computation that people are trying to work on, but for the most part, like, software is software. um, and it's cool that you've got this course and it's focusing on fundamentals, and people can start to now incrementally add more machine learning capabilities because serverless technologies are so much simpler to deploy, right? Do you have any, like, cool, like, real world success stories where people or companies have been using machine learning and serverless successfully that you could talk about?
Yeah, there are lots of examples. There are big ones that we know, like when we talk about the Netflix, for example, or the Coca-Cola. You know, Netflix um, was is delivering about 40 billion hours of videos to more than 100 customers in 55 countries. And when they embrace the event driven and the whole serverless architecture with the microservice architecture, so they were able to improve their efficiency and customer experience. Talking about Coca-Cola, for example, they adopted serverless, and they were able to support their digital marketing campaigns because they were using API Gateway and Lambda in favor of EC2. So this helped them to reduce their operational costs by 3 times on their vending machines. So this saved them about $25 million per year on operating costs. So there are lots of interesting applications of serverless machine learning, and those are some of the things that push me to say, let us share this knowledge and let's learn how to do this.
Yeah, like you said, there's cost savings from serverless, and then there will always be people who are like, "Oh no, it's like if you buy bare metal, it's gonna be better at scale." And I get it always depends, and based on your personal situation, it might be cheaper to hire an entire team of folks to run a data center for you. That's completely possible. However, in my experience, I've always found there's way more room to delegate that operations overhead to a vendor and then allow the engineers to just focus on whatever the business is in the business of doing. It's not their business is does not include operating data centers. It's like serving drinks from vending machines, right? Like that's their business. The more drinks they sell, the better their business is because that's what it's built around. It's not built around data centers.
Yeah.
So, Cyril, can you talk to me a little bit about? I know you've got the course, right? But for those who are still not sure about where to get started with machine learning, they can take the course, obviously, and that's a explicit plug. But other than that, how would you get a developer today with everything that you've learned to start doing machine learning? Assume that they've already kind of know some serverless stuff because our audience is already kind of aware of serverless. How do they start extending that into machine learning?
Yes. So to move to machine learning, I would advise someone. I mean, first of all, Python is good. Let's assume that they've learned Python, for example. So Python is already the program is a programming language of choice. So from Python, learning the core Python and maybe understanding classes and all that. So what you need to move towards is packages that are specialized for machine learning, like Pandas, NumPy, scikit-learn, Seaborn, Matplotlib. So those packages that make you start looking at the data cleaning, data wrangling, building models like with scikit-learn. So when you start learning those packages, you start doing those predictive work. Yes, you start understanding. That is not magic. You start understanding how features are important, feature engineering, things like that. Then you can now learn neural networks where you understand now deep learning, knowing like recurrent neural networks, convolutional neural networks. So that is now that subset of machine learning which tries to mimic the human brain. So it's more of complex neurons. Think of it like our nerves, our the brain, our eyes. We see pictures, colors, images, then shapes. Then we bring them together and we form the object. Things like that. I mean, it's complex here. So, but when you start learning those now, you'll be able to appreciate Gen AI, which is a subset again of deep learning, which is now trying to recreate an original content, create something that should look original. So it's more of generating something that, okay, this should look like what we expect to see. So it takes you move from that. I understand generally how the machine learning models work with the features that I need to choose for my models, to using neural networks which have billions and billions of neurons, and the Gen AI tool which has billions. And now you are able to appreciate when you get some kind of result, because you know it could either be from the features or it could be from I need to do some pruning, I need to do. So there are lots of things that come into play now after you've gotten that knowledge. And now when you have that knowledge, the next thing would be to see now how to integrate them, especially if you understand the microservices. You know, I'm going to use my machine learning powered application, or I have my application and I want to add machine learning to it. So now let's say you're using TypeScript or so, then you have your backend, you expose your API, and then maybe with your front end, your Lambda, your API gateway, you're able to communicate with that back end successfully. So I think doing that would help somebody to know that I have a problem in front of me. Will I use maybe traditional machine learning? Should I use deep learning, or should I use Gen AI? So it's not just maybe Gen AI is the only hammer. I mean, everything becomes a nail, right? Every you have that tool, and you now are having that balanced decision, and you'd understand that there are times when it's better to use traditional for one or two reasons, maybe cost, maybe the size of the model might make you to choose, and that's architecting, right? You need to, there must be trade-offs. Architecting is about trade-offs. So now you can easily do your trade-offs because you have that knowledge.
Very cool. Very cool. So it sounds like, if you're already doing serverless workloads and you're building microservices, the next step would then be learning the particular tools and frameworks for machine learning that you can start getting value out of the existing models, right? Like, are there a lot of things that you can do with existing models without having to train models from scratch?
Yes, yes, there are lots of things, and yeah, training is usually costly and might not be for everyone with the GPUs and the TPUs. So there are so many interesting things that you can do with models that are existing. You start from there before you start thinking of training models. But there are so many things. Yeah.
When I started experimenting with machine learning and Python, I don't have a big, mathematical background. Do you find that you need to know a lot of math understanding to do machine learning?
Yeah, that's the myth. I call it a myth because I used to have that conversation with people, friends and colleagues who are maybe on the web developer part. They'll be like, nah, I don't want to go to machine learning. There's lots of maths there. I just need to avoid that. Yeah, but there could be maths if you want to have maths. You know, if you want to have maths, you could go to the nit and gritty, you could go deep, you could try to find out everything. But there could also be a path where you navigate and you don't need to go deep into the maths. Yes, it's true, you need to understand things like gradient descent, some concept, but you don't need to derive every formula from scratch every time. Just
Mm.
getting an understanding of how they work, how it works. And just like you said, there are times when you might go back to look at computers, how they were before, I mean, how everything started time to time, but at least we start building, developing, and I mean, you need to start delivering the goods, producing something while you can go back, deep dive on something later on if you want more maths. But then the maths that people usually think is there, it's mostly statistics that you need to just have your understanding of statistics and some basic calculus. But then that will be sufficient to get you production ready apps. And if you want to learn more maths and maths and maths, it's your choice, but you can always go away without the more maths and maths.
I think it's good enough for folks to know that, the math underlying is statistics, but just statistics of a normal distribution. They're trying to force everything into a normal distribution, and then how to fit a curve or a line or a series of curves uh, to the data points that you plot. That's really pretty much all there is for a developer to interact with. Like, you can go much deeper if you want, like you said, but you definitely don't have to.
Yeah, because I could say you learn as you go along, right? Learn as needed, right? Because yes, there are some interesting concepts that you need to know back for propagation, forward propagation, some things, but then you learn as needed.
One cool tool that I like using, I don't know if you've used it, is Streamlit. Have you ever heard of that? Streamlit for Python?
Yes, yeah, it's cool. You loved it, right?
I really love it. For our listeners that haven't tried it, check it out. It's called Streamlit, Streamlit. It's a framework and deployment platform for building Python data apps and data visualizations and notebooks, and it gives you a nice like wrapper that will generate a web page, essentially a web application for you, with very minimal Python coding around it, and it's a lot of fun to use. I love it because it has this thing called confetti. It has a confetti method. So whenever something finishes running, you can say dot confetti. And then as soon as it's done running, like confetti pops on the screen and it's just a fun animation. I don't know. That's why I like it.
Yeah, there's so much to learn out there, right?
Definitely. And the best place to learn is by signing up for Cyril's course. And we'll definitely have links in the description below and as part of this post here. But now, Cyril, we've been talking for a while, and we've talked about some really deep things and how to help developers, and what's the best and worst part about this and that. But I really have the most important question for you now. Okay, this is where you got to really put the this is the heavy hitting journalism that I bring to the Talking Serverless podcast. You ready?
Yeah.
Which animal on this earth that's alive right now would you want to talk to for 1 hour? You get 1 hour to talk to any animal alive on the earth right now. What is it?
Okay, I'm talking to a dog. Would you consider the dog like, because at home we need to talk to dog, or would you be talking about a wild animal which we don't see?
Okay, so most of the time, I think it would be more interesting to talk to an undomesticated animal.
Yeah, undomesticated animal.
Yeah. But do you have a preference? Again, it's,
No, I just love tigers. I don't know.
tigers.
Yeah,
Tigers.
yeah, I just love
Okay.
tigers. If I could talk to tigers, but I might need to talk from a distance, I might.
Well, that's the thing. Maybe if you were able to actually talk to it, maybe it wouldn't want to eat you. Who knows?
I don't know. I need to be in a cage.
So your answer is tiger.
Yeah, yeah, I love to talk. I love tigers.
Yeah, why tigers though?
I don't know. I just love the beauty of tigers, the massive size, the colors they have, the strength they have. I mean, I just love tigers. I don't know, for some reason. I think everybody would be saying maybe lion, 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 but then I just find tigers really, 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 really cool, really cool. I know that, okay. A tiger with a lion on one to one, it's hard for the lion, but with the lion as a team, it's hard for tigers. So, but yeah, I just love tigers. Yeah.
The show episode now should probably be called Eye of the Tiger, and we'll have to play that song during this segment to make it fully come full circle. So that there's our answer, folks. Cyril would want to talk to a tiger and learn all of the ins and outs of tiger life. And that could also be a hashtag, tiger life.
Yeah, tiger life. That could be a cool hashtag, right?
Maybe the tigers would have an opinion about machine learning. You never know.
Yeah, we
You
never
never know.
know. But I might need to go there. I need to have some security.
I mean, that's a good point. You picked a dangerous animal to talk to. You didn't pick like a sloth. You picked one of the most dangerous predators on the planet to talk to, and I think that says a lot about your initiative and your ambition and your ability to create these massive machine learning courses and become a hero and represent machine learning throughout the entire world, truly. And so, thank you for doing all of this and putting yourself out there. It takes a lot of work and courage to be able to do, and I hope that our listeners enjoy the course. And I know the community stands behind you. And, wanted to thank you for coming on the show today and talking with me. Is there anything else you wanted to give a shout out or a plug for before we wrap up today?
I just want to say thank you for having me, Paul. It's really been a very rich conversation. I really enjoyed it. I love the podcast and I love all that you're doing. I'm really grateful to have been a guest here. So I would just say, let's keep learning, let's keep building, because together we are, I mean, the change is the only constant. So things will keep changing and we just have to learn, adapt, move with the trends, and keep building. So I hope to see many of you joining the course because it's going to be interactive, as in I'm accessible for questions. We can always have the discussions, even offline, online, anywhere. I really want to share and I really want us to continue to grow in our careers, especially as the one man army thing is now all over the place. So I want us to be robust cloud engineers, right? Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thanks again, Cyril, and thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. You might be listening to it on your favorite podcatcher of choice or watching the video on YouTube. And if you are watching, please hit the subscribe button, like it, share it, leave a comment. Maybe comment what animal you would talk to if you had an hour to talk to an animal. Let me know. I think that would be interesting. And this podcast has been brought to you by Serverless Guru. Serverless Guru is your cloud partner for doing all things serverless. And give us a shout if you have some cool projects in mind. And with that, thank you very much and have a wonderful day.